We are God.
Hey everyone, Mikey here, and welcome to another build video, where today I am showcasing my super controller build on the Fleet Tier 6 Oberth. And this ship and video is dedicated to our beloved community manager for Star Trek Online, Mike Fathom, aka Ambassador Keal. For years, the community was begging for this ship, and then we finally got it, but unfortunately it has been overlooked. I must say that is kind of sad, because this ship is actually a lot better than people give it credit for. Yes, it's an Oberth. Yes, it's made out of cardboard. But as a science ship, it is very good, and it is a solid choice in my opinion. Hence why I decided to do this build on this ship. So let's take a quick look at the build, shall we? So here is the build, and as you can see, it is named after our community manager, Keal. I remember when this ship came out, a whole bunch of us named it after him in various ways. I decided to name it Keal's Nightmare, because this was the bane of his existence for the longest time. So as you can see, the stats are fairly good. Sitting still, with the only buff being from leisurely pace, I am sitting at 636 control. In a match, when I get fully buffed up, and depending on the length of the match, I have gotten this up to 900 control. It would be possible to do 1,000, but hey, I'll take what I can get. It's pretty much a almost normal science build. I do have a few tweaks. Torpedoes, I'm using the Delphic, again for a debuff. Gravimetric, because it's one of the best science torpedoes. And the Dark Matter Quantum for Chemis, basically for Chemisite, and for the two-piece with the console. For deflector, again, I am using the Gamma Rep deflector. This is one of the better ones if you're going to go the route of control, because it's one of the highest control deflectors out there. Good amount of EPG and a good amount of drain as well. Using one of the Colony deteriorating secondary deflectors. Again, it's a whole whack of control, EPG, projectile damage, and drain. Suits everything on this build. Engines, I've gone back to starting to use the Delta engines more and more on my science builds, mainly for the extra control. Yes, this is severely overcapped, but the cap only, when you hit 400, the range of your gravity well is capped at 12, but the repel gets stronger and stronger, so it is worth it to go over cap, in my opinion. Warp core, revolutionary warp core. This is now becoming pretty much normal use for science builds. Extra control. As you can see, control, control, control. And then using the shields, mainly just because the two-piece, it's not anything amazing, but it's extra crit severity from EPG, so. And extra turn rate, which this ship doesn't need, but this build does need because of the power settings and the lack of certain abilities. For mines, I'm using the competitive mine, the Tetrion mine, and the Thorium Infused mine. The only reason I'm using the competitive mine because, well, for some reason I have misplaced my Nukara mine, which would be here. So yeah, normally this would be the Nukara mine. I don't know where it went. I can't find it. It could just be me being a dumbass, but whatever. Still does decent damage. Tetrion mine was a mission drop. This is an excellent mine, especially for science. And the Thorium Infused from the Delta Rep store. Devices, standard devices you see on pretty much every build. Deuterium, Exotic Flood, Reactive Armor Catalyst, and the Kobayashi Maru. Universal consoles, pretty much when you get the Tier 6X and you get the extra console, you're going to put Lorca's custom controls here. This console, regardless of build, is too good to pass up. It's that much crit chance, weapon power, which on this build is irrelevant, but the shield pin is amazing, especially for torps. For engineering consoles, this is where some of these are normal and you see often, and some of them are you don't. Of course, binaural infusion circuits, control, and the most crit severity on a console in the game. Science build means you use Genesis Seed. This thing is stupid good. Max 1 hits can exceed 1 million, plus it gives you more drain and some radiation damage. Neutronic Eddies, another pretty much meta science console. We all know this comes from the weather control ship. If you were able to obtain it during the summer event a couple years ago, good on you. If not, it sucks, but at least that ship is in MUDs, and when it is on sale, it is worth it. This console is very good, especially for science builds. A new console that has been only in the game for a little while, and that's the Unstable Planetoid Detonation. This came from the Lobby store, and it came when we got the California class in-game. The reason I'm using this, it is the single highest control passive in the game. The clicky has a lot to be desired, but the passive is actually really too good to pass up. Using 2 exotic particle focusers from your fleet research. Again, extra control and... one is control EPG and the other one is control and drain. Using the destructive resonance emitter. Again, I chose to use this because of the passive gives extra control, extra kinetic damage, and its clicky actually gives a bit of a debuff. Normally only use this on my support builds, but I thought I'll give it a try on this, and it worked out quite well. Of course, the Delphic Tear Generator, another must-have for science builds. Yes, it's expensive, it's a Lobby console, but it's a Cat 2 exotic damage and extra crit severity. Plus its active is does very good damage, and it's another debuff. Can't have an effective high-end control build without the Plasma Storm module. Extra control and EPG for the passives, and the plasma control ability is just amazingly good. I'm not going to say this is must-have. You can get around it, but it is extremely beneficial and probably one of the top Lobby ships to get, and that would be the Maquis Raider. Or get that in the DS9 MUDs pack if you're able to afford that. I throw on the tachyonetic converter because I was having a little bit of issues flying this ship, and I thought, you know what, it's, again, more control. You can't have too much control. Extra turns, always good, and extra crits. You can't turn that down. And last but certainly not least is one of the best science consoles, and that is the Tholian Web Spinner. Again, passive is control. You can see, I've tried to jam in as much control as I could on this build, just to see how I could get it on an Oberth, and yeah. And this console does extremely high damage on its own anyways. Skill tree is the same as pretty much all my other builds. Temporal primary, Intel secondary. My personal space traits are pretty much my standard loadout for my science, and that's going to be Fragment of AI Tech for the extra control. Intelligence Agent Attaché to reduce captain abilities. Even though this one it's off a weapon, so I'm not going to proc it as much, but it still procs a fair bit. Psychological warfare, bonus effectiveness to your control abilities, always good to have. Resonating payload modification, extra physical and kinetic damage resistance rating against your enemies, and because of science, everything is physical kinetic, so it's very good to have. Of course, Terran targeting, you can't turn down the crit severity. Boimler, pretty much meta console for everything. This is the cooldown reduction ability. If you're gonna grind for one premium item that is a Lobby item, this is the item to get, even though I would recommend for most players to grind the EC and buy it off of the exchange. The second most important personal trait out there, and that is unconventional systems. We've all seen it. Every time you use a control ability, reduces universal consoles. As we all know, universal consoles is where a lot of the damage these days comes from. Fleet Coordinator for the bonus Cat 2 damage for all teams, so it's a bonus 10% flat Cat 2 damage. Can't say anything bad about that. Invasive Control Programming basically has a chance to trigger a random subsystem disable, so it's worth having. And of course, the Particle Manipulator from your Science R&D for the extra crit chance and crit severity for your exotic damage abilities. Starship traits using the weaponized exotic particles from the Tier 6 Terran Trailblazer. 75 exotic particle when using standard firing modes. Yes, I only have the one firing mode, so I don't get this that often, but it's still good to have. Because this is a temporal ship and I have temporal abilities, exotic modulation, this is from the Tier 6 Kronos Dreadnought. 20% Cat 2 exotic damage for 15 seconds when using temporal abilities. Improved gravity well. Again, I know a lot of people don't like using this on ISEs. I do, if used at the right spots, for example, mainly in the center, but it increases the duration, decreases the reduction time, but the main reason I do use it is the damage resistance rating. Leisurely pace, this is becoming a staple for a lot of my builds when I'm doing science builds, and it's too hard to pass up the extra 60, pass up the extra 60 EPG and extra 60 control. As we all know, you're not always going to be moving, so you're going to get this a lot. Using Spore Infused, I have 2 anomalies, and with the repulsors, we've been noticing that we're getting a lot more damage, so I thought I'd try it, and we'll see it did fairly well. And the other trait that I've been using a lot lately on my science builds, and that is, of course, Synthetic Good Fortune from your Tier 6 Nova. Every time you use a control ability, it increases your crit chance and control expertise and stacks 40 times. Can't say enough about it. Basically, that trait is how I can get this build up to almost 1,000 control. So for stations, very cold in space, which is an anomaly, so it will trigger Spore Infused, plus does a little bit of damage and reduces their flight speed. You're not going to get a lot of damage out of it, but you can mainly using this as a Spore Infused proc. Chemocyte Lace Weapons and Torpedo Spread, because it's a forced tactical seat, and they're the abilities that suit it the most. Engineering, of course, using Power to Aux, because you can never have too much aux power, and a proc a duty officer. Emit unstable warp bubble and eject warp plasma, Yukon procs. For the science temporal, using Heisenberg, chronometric inversion field, timeline collapse, and of course gravity well 3, which is the main feature of this build, and all Yukon procs. Using Tachyon Beam and DRB, these are to proc the secondary deflector, and Tractor Beam repulsors. We've been finding that this ability on its own does a fair amount of damage, but also it procs Spore Infused a lot more than we thought it used to. So duty officers. So for duty officers, a little bit different, similar to most of what you would use for your side torp. Again, I don't have the expensive Borg ones on this tune, otherwise I'd use them. But it is what it is. I make do with what I have. And of course, using Law to reduce the recharge time of Torp, a crit chance Torpedo Officer, the exotic damage Technician, Dragon Ball to turn repulsors to a pull instead of a push, and then the Aftershock Gravity Well Officer and the Engines Offline Gravity Well Officer. Pretty much you see these on almost most science builds anyways, so nothing too surprising. So that was the build, so now we will go to the ISE and the parse explanation, and we will see you shortly after. what an ISC that was. I must say this ship is a hell of a lot better than I was expecting it to be. And hell, come on. 514k in an Oberth. Yeah, this ship is good. Very overlooked, which is sad, but hey, to each his own. Joining me in that run is my usual crowd, and that was JB. He did 405 in his testing a beam overload build. We had our tanking protege, Lord Ice, 156, but as a tank, his damage is irrelevant, because as a tank, you were looking at this figure, and that 93% attacks in. And considering that the Borg barely noticed me at 1.4% attacks in, goddamn Ice. Very well done. Very well done. To keep a control science build of this magnitude that safe, excellent job. We also had Talon joining us, and she did a very, very good 146k. And our good friend Emma did a very respectable 94k, a hair under 100k. But considering that her build is a gimmick build, as she would say, very well done, Emma. Very proud of you guys. You guys have come a long way. I just want to say appreciate it. And don't forget, everyone, make sure you go smash that like button and go see JB and tell him I sent you. His link is down below. So let's take a look at the player analysis. So not surprisingly, that the science build, the pets are going to be number one, 188k. And again, not surprising, Neutronic Eddie was the star of the show at 52k. Just to goes to show you that this console is so good, very well worth it. And again, everyone, this was a free console. I can't stress this enough. A free console that does this much damage in endgame content on a science build. Genesis Seed, 39k, not the best showing, but 1.4 million as a max one hit. I will take that any day of the week. The rest, pretty much the standard. You know, chronometric inversion field did very well. Cryonic turbulence, it did exceptionally well. Badland cyclone, which is the plasma storm, did 14. Very, very, very respectable. Looking back at the other abilities, again, not surprising. Chain web projection is right up there near the top. It's always going to be second or third on science builds at 49k. Deterring secondary deflector only did 46, and I think that's mainly because my piloting, and yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't think my timing of activating abilities was as good as it could have been, but hey, I'm not going to complain about these results. Gravity Well did 21k, pretty much expected. Spore infused anomalies, this is going to be from Very Cold in Space. I just don't know why they don't have it labeled there. Maybe it's because it's too long, I don't know. But did 18k. Spore infused from the Gravity Well did 17. So that's 35k right there from those two. And then when you look down the list, and then add another 3k from the Aftershocks. So 38k DPS from Spore infused anomalies is very good. And as I stated earlier, that is mainly because the tractor beam repulsors seem to proc it a lot. I've noticed a sharp increase in the damage output of Spore infused when using repulsors compared to builds when I don't use it. So excuse me. So yeah. The gravimetric rift from the gravimetric torpedo did 15k. And then we get into the mines, 15k, 10k from the gravimetric torpedo on its own, no boosts. Chemosite, 11k. The repulsors on their own did 10k, so that is why another reason to slot it. So you add the 35, 40k from the Spore infused, and then add another 10k. So that one ability is responsible for 50k DPS damage. So if we added them all together, it would be the number one under pets. So if you are going the route of science builds and going to be using Spore infused anomalies, make sure you are using tractor beam repulsors. Again, I want to thank Low Life Cat, aka Sarcasm Detector, and Neojet for basically putting me towards doing that. And those guys are both crazy when it comes to science builds, so the links to their channels are also below, so make sure you check them out. And then everything else is pretty much standard. 9K from Plasma Storm, DRB 7K. So yeah, it's pretty much a standard results. So there we have it. Over 500k in a tier 6 fleet Oberth. Who would have thunk it? I will admit the damage is a lot higher than I was expecting, especially considering that this is set up to be a super controller. But hey, I'll take it. And goes to show you that an Oberth does have its uses. And it can be used in the high-end endgame content. Very overlooked ship that people mainly just get it for the console because that console is meta on the high-end torpedo builds. So they'll get the ship, grab the console, and then trash the ship. I think that's a waste. I think this ship can do a lot more than people realize, and it's a lot better than people give it credit for. So once again, this video has been dedicated to our beloved community manager, Ambassador Keal. I know the Oberth has been the bane of your existence for God knows how long, but I want to do this and show that this ship actually can be good. So I hope everyone has enjoyed this video. Please do all the normal YouTube things, comment, like, subscribe, turn on the bell for notifications. It really does make a difference and really does help the channel. Don't forget, I also stream over on Twitch. The link is down below. And until the next video, I hope everyone has a fantastic day. Bye-bye.
We are God.